Hello YouTube. I have discussed paranormal phenomena and UFO sightings in the Urals in a number of my videos. There have been reports of paranormal phenomena in the Ural Mountains in ancient times when the land was not a part of the Russian state. It is simply impossible to collect all of the cases pertaining to the Urals, and of course there's information which civilian researchers cannot have in their hands. But trust me, a number of entities are interested in the mountains and what they hide. And I will do my best to continue my research, and I urge you, my audience, to continue the same. If you're interested in the Ural Mountains and if you visit Russia, do not skip visiting those magnificent mountains. The Urals were discovered by the people of the Russian city of Novgorod in the 9th century. One could find descriptions of these mysterious mountains in the old Arabian tales and Scandinavian sagas, but the land was no stranger to mysteries and enigmas even thousands of years ago. Old legends of the Urals speak of an ancient people known as Chud. It was a strange dark-skinned tribe in possession of secret powers, dwelling in the ancient Ural Mountains. The legends tell that for reasons unknown to us, the Chud people left the area and descended into the bowels of the earth, where they built underground cities. The Chud still inhabits those mysterious underground cities, away from the human beings who live in the Ural Mountains. Geologically, Ural Mountains are remnants of an ancient range that rose toward the end of the Paleozoic era some 250 million years ago. The Ural region has extensive deposits of iron ore and coal in close proximity, as well as rich deposits of chromium, manganese, copper, zinc, platinum, silver, and gold. I like metallurgy, and a lot of my research have to do with strange discoveries in the Urals. For example, ancient high-tech, we could call it that. The Urals never cease to amaze us. Again, it is quite possible that the area had been visited by extraterrestrial in the activity, or had been a site of an advanced, vanished civilization. Thousands of strange, mostly spiral-shaped objects had been discovered, found in between the years of 1991 and 1993 by gold prospectors on the small river Narada on the eastern side of the Urals at the depths of between 10 to 40 feet. The objects range in size from a maximum of 1.2 inches down to an incredible 1/10,000th of an inch. The objects are composed of various metals. The larger ones are of copper, while the small and very small ones are of the rare metals tungsten and molybdenum. Russian scientists, to an extent, had been engaged in a serious research of the tiny objects. Whatever created the objects must have been an incredibly advanced technology. There is a remarkable resemblance to control elements used in micro-miniature devices. Scientific tests give an age for the objects between 20,000 and 318,000 years, depending on the depth and the situation of the site. In the Russian reports of the Academy of Sciences for the year of 1995, it is reported about how geologists investigated strange finds in the exploration of the gold-bearing rocks in Syktyvkar area. They made holes or pits and pulled buckets of sand out on a rope. Tungsten springs were found in the taiga, remote areas untouched by civilization at depths of 6 to 12 meters. And this corresponds to the upper Pleistocene, or hundreds, thousands years before our era. Technogenic contamination of samples is excluded, since metal, tungsten, and its alloys were not part of any of the mechanisms equipment and devices used during drilling and the search of the area itself. And the area is located many kilometers from any industrial enterprises. However, it's known that tungsten, well, combined with rare earth is used in plasma engines of space rockets. So the artifacts are clearly artificial in origin. They could not have been brought to the Urals in the past 40 years, along with the wreckage of current spacecraft. A large number of springs were found in 3 different places. This is information that's more or less known in the West to an extent, but I want to present it to you. And not many people in the West know about it, but it is what's out there. The conclusion that this case suggests, the artifacts did not just come from somewhere. Someone or something scattered them on the Earth, on our planet, about 100,000 years ago. Given that the region of the Urals is rich in minerals, we can assume that in the area many millennia ago there was either some kind of a metallurgical complex associated with rocket technology, or a spaceport, or maybe something similar. But now I want to provide a few more details and my own research. In 1991, engineer mineralogist Regina Akimova worked with a microscope in a laboratory in the mountains. All of a sudden, she got samples of sand that had a lot of strange springs in them. What are the springs from? She had been working in gold prospecting since 1962, but she has never found anything like this. At first, she thought they were parts of gold mining units, but then she hesitated. They were too small, way too small. The following year, specialists from the Ural branch of the Russian Academy of Sciences came to the prospectors from Syktyvkar. Regina Sergeyevna gave them samples of springs for research, and Russian scientists determined their composition in the laboratory. The scientists' surprise was immense. These natural formations, as the springs are carefully named in the reports, were almost entirely composed of tungsten. However, tungsten is only found in nature as compounds. In addition, the springs had an extremely regular shape, and some were equipped with molybdenum cores or ended with a tungsten droplet, as if they were melted. Do you remember the melting point of tungsten? More than 3000 degrees Celsius. This is the most refractory metal. Refractory, that's any material that has an unusually high melting point and that maintains its structure properties at very high temperatures. So Russian geologists also talk to the defense industry, showing them one mini spring. They are not ours, the Russian military replied. We haven't reached nanotechnology yet. Consider the time it was being investigated. Now let's hear from another Russian scientist. I came across these springs in 1994 in the area of the Narada River, said Yelena Matveyeva, candidate of geological and mineralogical sciences, head of the department of the Central Research Institute of Precious and Non-Ferrous Metals. And it immediately became clear that we are not talking about any details of bulldozers or spirals from broken light bulbs. We were prospecting for gold deposits with shovels and picks. We made pits and pulled buckets of sand out on a rope. So tungsten springs were found in the untouched by civilization taiga remote sites at depths of 6 to 12 meters. And this corresponds to the upper Pleistocene, or 100,000 years before our era. We studied these springs in detail, including on an electron microscope, continued Yelena Veniaminovna. They are really similar to modern incandescent coils used in light bulbs, but in some respects they differ from them. Ufologists try to assure me that in the Urals we have found parts of broken flying saucers or the ruins of power stations of ancient humanoid civilizations that have inhabited our Earth. I do not know. I personally think that these are the traces of a meteorite fall, and 100,000 years ago it entered the atmosphere at high speed. Diffusible materials evaporated, and the tungsten inclusions took on this strange shape. Unfortunately, my version has not been confirmed yet. No such tungsten nuggets have been found in any meteorites found today. What about the first scientist I mentioned to you, my audience? Well, of course, this is not a natural compound, says Regina Sergeyevna firmly. Believe, she says, a specialist with 40 years of experience. But 100,000 years ago, is anyone investigating them today? She was asked by the Komsomolskaya Pravda newspaper reporter. No, was her response. But you see, for some time the objects had been studied by Russian scientists. Actually, 3 institutes of the Russian Academy of Sciences in Syktyvkar, Moscow, and St. Petersburg, independently from one another, examined those strange objects. The results of the examinations shocked the scientific world. It turned out that the many objects consisted of copper and rare metals, tungsten and molybdenum. Tungsten has an ultra-high density. Its melting point is 3,420 degrees Celsius. This metal is used to make cathodes and anodes for electronic devices and filaments for incandescent lamps. Molybdenum also has a very high density. Its melting point is 2,620 degrees Celsius. It is used for manufacture parts of electric vacuum devices, incandescent lamp threads, and finishing armored coatings that carry a very large load. The first findings of microscopic objects were also studied at the Central Research and Exploration Institute of Non-Ferrous and Rare Metals in Moscow, during the processing of samples taken from ore deposits. In examination number 18/485, dated November 29, 1996, Dr. Matveyeva confirmed that the analysis of filamentous tungsten spirals in the alluvial deposits of the Balbaniu River in the drill core of the third alluvial terrace on the left bank. According to the report, the samples belong to the Upper Pleistocene, that is, to the geological epoch that began 2 million years ago and ended about 10,000 years ago. We also refer to it as the Ice Age. Some Russian journalists actually saw her collection, many years of works, photographs, reports, and protocols of scientific research that Elena Veniaminovna has repeatedly offered to the attention of academic publications and her superiors. It was like a kind of mini museum of priceless documentary and factual materials that can be envied by any collector of rarities. In the drawers of Elena Veniaminovna's desk are hidden, just in case, samples of those strange spirals and balls. In the scope of the microscope, their fantastic forms come to life. And she said, "I can't throw it away. It's a pity." She smiled. And that was years ago. And people age. Anyway, although geologists continue to find amazing spirals, balls, and rings, attention to them gradually weakened. What it is and from where remained the mystery behind 7 seals. According to the rather scant data that we have today, I still tend to come to the conclusion that all these are products of man-made origin, Matveyeva argues, but whose handiwork it is. See, before she thought it was a meteorite. Anyway, externally the natural parts are very similar to twisted tungsten wire, which is used in incandescent lamps, including those used in the space industry. It is difficult to imagine that such details are spontaneously found in nature. Interesting. Now, here was a very interesting analysis. Imagine a spiral which is less than a millimeter in size. It was photographed by a 500-fold magnification under an electron microscope at the Theological Institute in Moscow. If it had been made in the 20th century, then of course it would not have become a sensation. Such products can be mass-produced using nanotechnology. But this spiral was created in the Pleistocene. It is at most 2 million and at least 10,000 years old. Okay? Now let's hear from someone with opposing point of view. Nikolai Rumyantsov, Doctor of Geological and Mineralogical Sciences, distinguished geologist of the city of Tula in Russia. He says, a well-known fact, in 1991, gold miners found several tungsten springs in the circumpolar Urals. Tungsten, the metal from which the coils of light bulbs are made, melts at a temperature of 3,500 degrees. And this, together with the intricate shape of the finds, suggests that they are artificial. Moreover, the age of the rock layers in which the springs were found is about 100,000 years old. So, ufologists conclude the artifacts are clearly alien. Nikolai Rumyantsov himself was in those areas with a geological expedition in 1984, and he also found springs. In fact, they're tiny sizes from, he says, 0.01 to 0.003 millimeters. You can only see it through a microscope. But ufologists prefer not to mention this, Rumyantsov says. Springs could be classified as mysterious if you do not know that in circumpolar Urals, in the area of the rivers Bolshaya Pola, Narada, Kazhim, very often found are native tungsten of the most bizarre shape and in the form of spirals, chains, and rings. How this is formed is not clear, he says, but it is earthly impurities in the composition of the nuggets indicate that natural rather than artificial origin. And finally, all the finds are made along the banks of rivers in layers of soil that were once brought here by water. So springs can be any number of years old, even much more than the estimated 100,000. They could have been formed, for example, in the era when volcanoes were still active in the Urals. So much for the high temperature for melting tungsten. That's Rumyantsov's opinion. And here's a conclusion of yet another doubting scientist. Thus, existing hypotheses do not provide an explanation for all the available facts. Since no archaeological excavations have been carried out in the territory of the discovery of artifacts, the issue cannot be considered definitely resolved in favor of their extraterrestrial or modern Earth origin. It is only established that those artifacts are a product of high technology. But you see, my audience, the mystery deepens and we must travel to the Russian Asia and hear from yet another resident of the city of Tula. Kolyma is a region located in the Russian Far East. It is bounded by the East Siberian Sea and the Arctic Ocean in the north and the Sea of Okhotsk to the south. The region gets its name from the Kolyma River in the mountain range, part of which were not discovered by people in Russia and Soviet Union until 1926. Today the region consists roughly of the Chukotka Autonomous Okrug or district and the Magadan Oblast or region, Magadan region. And by the way, in my books about USOs and UFOs, you will find very interesting information about UFO sightings and encounters in that area. I've collected it. And I am glad that people in Russia, now in Russian, can read about it. And my book had been, mine and Philip Mantel's books about the subject have been translated now, I believe, into 8 languages. And it's a great way to build bridges among researchers and let the world know about Russia and Eurasia. Now, Mikhail Yefimovich Koshman is a resident of the Tula region. And although he is a retiree, every summer he goes with his guild or his team to the gold fields in Chukotka. They do it quite legally by entering into a contract with a company that has a license to mine gold in those places. Mikhail Yefimovich likes this kind of work. First, earnings are a good addition to his pension. Secondly, he is a former geologist, I'm going to underline it more than once, who has worked in those regions for 21 years. And he can no longer live without the north, where he is drawn like a magnet. But he did not come to the Komsomolskaya Pravda editorial office to talk about the beauty of Chukotka. Mikhail Yefimovich brought mysterious artifacts that he found during his trip. He, a professional geologist, could not explain their origin. And he said, we worked 150 kilometers from Bilibin, the capital of the gold-bearing district of the Golden Kalima, in the area of Kachkarny, said Mr. Koshman. We got a strange stream this time. They were working in a brook or a stream, panning for gold. I had been there before and always paid attention to the fact that there are no fish in it at all. The situation is absurd for Chukotka, and maybe for this reason, or maybe for another reason, it is never visited or roamed by reindeer herders. The stream turned out to be rich, continued Mikhail Yefimovich. Our guild even exceeded the norm, but twice I found strange springs in a tray of gold-bearing sand. Imagine they were lying in the layer of sand that was brought here at least 10,000 years ago, and were buried under more than 5 meters of silt and clay. There were 5 springs altogether, perfectly smooth, muddy steel color. The diameter of each is a little more than 1 millimeter, the length from 3 to 7 millimeters. Moreover, in appearance they were elements of some technical design. In the terminology of Russian ufologists, such things as this are known as paleo-artifact. That is, the objects of man-made origin found during excavations or in other situations in ancient layers of soil, where they could get much earlier than human civilization appeared on the face of this planet. Koshman gave a few springs found. He gave them to the Komsomolskaya Pravda newspaper, and the editors asked experts to explore them. They first showed the springs to the director of the Mineralogical Museum, Fersman, that's the name of the museum. They showed it to the doctor of geological and mineralogical sciences, Margarita Novgorodova. The answer was categorical. This is clearly of technological origin. And at her request, a senior researcher at the same museum, Vladimir Karpenko, examined them with an electronic scanning microscope. Conclusion: more than 90% of the spring consists of tungsten. The rest is mercury. Another analysis was made for the newspaper by specialists of the State Scientific Center Obninsk Research and Production Enterprise Technologia, where they are engaged in the development of new materials for space, aviation, and energy. Oleg Komissar, Deputy General Director of the company, candidate of technological sciences, said the following. He also believes that the unknown spring was made by a man-made, that is. Moreover, the percentage of tungsten in the composition shows that the purpose of the unknown spring is identical to the incandescent light bulb, but the presence of mercury is confusing. They conducted a comparative analysis of the spiral of an ordinary light bulb and the one that Koshman found. Morphologically, their surfaces differ significantly. In a normal lamp, it is smooth. The wire diameter is about 35 micrometers. The wire in the spring of unknown origin has longitudinal regular grooves on the surface with fused edges, and its diameter is 100 micrometers. But it is unclear how the springs could get to a depth of 5.5 meters. So there you have it. I just want to add that years ago I consulted Margarita Novgorodova about the advanced metallurgical finds I have described in my videos about the mysteries of the Mongol Empire. I have been in touch with Komsomolskaya Pravda about the spirals research, as well as Matveyeva over 4 years ago. She confirmed that she really worked with artifacts from alluvial deposits of the Kazhim area. Unfortunately, she lost contact with Regina Akimova. The springs are in Matveyeva's archives. Hopefully, one day there will be sufficient funds and interest in Russia to study those mysterious nanotechnological artifacts, and I'm sure more will be found. I have more projects planned about the Ural Mountains and Russian Far East, and soon there will be more new videos. Meanwhile, please see my other videos in this channel about the Urals, Siberia, Russia, and Eurasia, and the paranormal phenomena. If you can support my research, you can find the links in the description to this video. Thank you for your attention, and we'll speak again.